Today we're talking about where should the ball be positioned specifically when you're hitting your irons. I'm PGA teaching professional Todd Kolb, Director of Instruction for USGolfTV and the Sanford Power Golf Academy. And today we're talking about ball position, and we're going to do a deep dive on ball position. Where should it be? What are some of the common mistakes that you might make? How can you reference the ball position? And more importantly, how can you find it every single time? Now, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to our channel and be sure to ring the bell so you get notifications of when we put out new content, and be sure to leave a comment. I love hearing from you. Maybe you can teach me something, or maybe you have an idea. You have an idea that might help our other fellow golfers find good ball position. So first of all, here's what we're going to do. We're talking about what is ball position, how do we reference it. Number two, we're going to talk about some of the common mistakes that we see with ball position. We're going to talk about a process that you can do, a 1, 2, 3 step process to make sure you get the ball in the right spot. And last but not least, I'm going to give you a specific drill that has to do for those golfers who are slicing the golf ball by actually changing your ball position a little bit, can drastically help you. So when we're talking about ball position, typically people think in reference of where is the ball relative to their feet. That's the most common way that we reference ball position. So if somebody says the ball is too far forward, what they mean is that the ball is too far towards the lead foot. So it's more off their lead foot. So I'm a right-handed golfer, so the ball would be more towards my left foot. If somebody says the ball is too far back, what they mean is that the ball is too far back towards their trail foot. So that's the first thing you got to understand is the terminology. If it's too far forward, they mean it's too far towards your lead foot. If it's too far back, it's too much towards your trail foot. Now, another way you can actually reference ball position is where is it relative specifically to like your chest or your body. So where is it relative to the zipper on your shirt or your jacket? Typically maybe like a logo. Lots of times there'll be a logo on a shirt. Where's the ball relative to the logo? That's a nice reference that we might use when we're talking about ball position. Or even, where's the ball relative to your face? Is it off your left? Is it off your lead ear? Is it kind of more in the middle of your face? Is it off your back ear? There's lots of ways that we can reference ball position. So when we're thinking about ball position, don't just be thinking about where is the ball relative to your feet. Be thinking about where is it also relative to your body, because the position of your body, okay, can drastically change that. So if my body's sitting back here, well, the ball position hasn't changed relative to my feet, but it's drastically changed relative to my chest and my face and those types of things. Just if I went the opposite way, if I had my body on this side and the ball didn't move, okay, the ball hasn't changed relative to my feet, but it's drastically changed relative to my body. So what I want you to take away from that part of the conversation is ball position is important, but it's not just ball position relative to your feet, it's where is it relative to your body. We're going to talk about some of those things, and like I said earlier, I'm going to give you a simple checkpoint that you can do to make sure it's in the right spot every single time. Now, the last thing I want to say here, before we move on to some of the specifics here, is that also be aware of where the ball is positioned in terms of the angle of the shaft. All right, so I've got just a ball down here, so I could have the ball positioned in a certain way. Let me switch this up and put my 4-iron down there. Okay, is my shaft in front of the ball? Is my shaft equal with the ball, or is it behind the ball? All right, that's another way when we're looking at ball position as an instructor. All right, that's another way that we want to look at that and be aware of it. So what you're hopefully gathering here is that there's a lot of things that are happening in ball position. So what might be some causes, or what might be some telltale signs that you have the ball in the wrong spot? Well, certainly contact, right? If you're struggling with contact, the ball very well could be in the wrong spot. And we know when we're hitting an iron, whether it's a pitching wedge or a 4-iron, that we want to come in contact with the ball first and then the ground. So we basically want the club to be traveling on a slight descending motion as it comes in contact with the golf ball. And when we talk about drivers and hybrids, that's a little bit different, all right? But with an iron, we want a descending blow. Another telltale sign that you might not have the ball in the right spot is contact. If you're hitting the ball in the toe or you're hitting the ball in the heel, all right, that could be an indicator that the ball is in the wrong spot. And the last one I want to talk about here is aim. All right, if your fellow golfers or your buddies or maybe even your instructor is telling you, hey, you're aimed too far to the left or you're too open, it could be because of the ball position. So as an example, if the ball is too far forward in the stance for the club, golfers instinctively will tend to get their aim too far to the left or open if you're a right-handed golfer. If they tend to have the ball too far back in their stance, they will tend to be a little bit kind of closed. All right, now as I mentioned already, at the end here, I'm going to give you a nice tip on ball position. If you slice a golf ball, what we just talked about there is going to be able to help you out. So let's get into some of the details here. First of all, what is the process that we can go through in order to get the ball in the right spot? So I've got two setups here. All right, I've got my Reimer short game training aid right here. I love this thing for ball position, not only for irons, but driver, putter, short game, you name it. I can use it in a variety of different situations. And I've got a pitching wedge and I've got a 4-iron. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start with the pitching wedge first. What I'm going to do, and this is the process I want you to go through. I want you to go ahead and grip the club and bring it up front. Okay, make sure your grip's in a good spot. We've done a lot of videos on grip. If you got questions on grip, go ahead and check on that already. Make sure your club face is nice and square. And then what I want you to do is I want you to put your feet together. And I want you to position the ball right in the center of your feet. Okay, and reminder, I got a pitching wedge here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my lead foot and move it towards the target a little bit. I'm going to take my trail foot and move it away from the target the same distance. So I've got the ball in the center. I'm moving my lead foot towards the target, let's say for sake of discussion 3 or 4 inches. I'm moving my trail foot the same amount, 3 or 4 inches away from the target. Now, with my short game trainer down here also, now I've got the ball in the right spot and I can reference it off the slider here, but I've got the ball positioned basically in the center of my stance. So when you're hitting like a 9-iron, a pitching wedge, a sand wedge, you know, those types of clubs, maybe even an 8-iron, you want that ball to be pretty much in the center of your stance. So this is a good way to do that. I got my feet together, separate, separate. Now when I go to the 4-iron, a little bit different. Okay, the 4-iron, we still want to have a slight descending blow on it, all right, but not as much as like a pitching wedge or a 9-iron. But I'm going to go through the same process. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my feet together, kind of got it set. You'll notice I've got the slider a little more forward on this particular one. Okay, and now I'm going to go ahead and separate, but when I separate, I'm going to actually take my lead foot, okay, and I'm not going to go quite as far this way as I do away from the target. And what that's going to do is that's going to position that ball just ever so slightly forward of what I call center. All right? Hopefully that's making sense to you. Now let's circle back real quick. How about where the ball could be relative to your body? Because we've been talking a lot about that. So let's go back to the pitching wedge. You know your process now. Got the grip up front, get the club face squared up, feet together. Okay, pitching wedge, I'm going to go equal, right? Now I want that ball to be positioned basically off like the zipper on your shirt or the buttons on your shirt. That's a really good reference point for you, or maybe just ever so slightly in front of your nose, maybe the lead eye barely, just kind of right in that position. All right, so not only do I have the ball in the right spot relative to my feet, but I've got my upper body position. That's another key component with having good ball position. And second, or last but not least, notice that I've got a little bit of forward shaftling. Notice how my hands are just ever so slightly in front of the ball there. All right, now back to the 4-iron. A little bit different. Still want to hit down on it a little bit. Okay, but let's talk about reference points up above. We've already talked about the feet. We know how to do that. Get your grip, club face squared up. Okay, I got to separate this way. All right, a little bigger step this way, so the ball is just ever so slightly forward of center. I've got my 4-iron in there. Okay, now this ball should be positioned basically off the logo on my shirt. Okay, maybe my lead ear, right in that point. Then I know I've got my body in the right spot as well. So when we're talking about ball position, we're talking about where it is relative to the feet. Okay, but also where is it relative to my body? Those are key components that we've got to talk about. So hopefully that makes sense. If you got some questions on that, be sure to leave a comment, or if you got anything you want to put in there, I do my best to answer all those types of stuff. Now, I promise you I'd give you a tip for those of you who slice the golf ball. All right, so let's talk about that. Here's what you got to know. Remember our earlier conversation. If the ball is too far back in our stance, all right, golfers will tend to aim a little bit to the right, or what we call, they'll tend to be closed. Okay. If you're slicing the golf ball, what I want you to do is I want you to move that ball slightly back in your stance and get a slight aim to the right. What that's going to do for us is that's going to help us hit just a little bit more down on the ball. And when we hit slightly more down on the ball, believe it or not, it's going to help us draw the golf ball. All right, now why is that? Well, we've done some pretty extensive videos on what we call the swing plane and an angle of attack and all those. Check some of those out if you want the real details, but you have to trust me in that if you move the ball back slightly, if you get your stance slightly closed and you keep the club face relatively square, that's going to definitely help you start drawing the golf ball. So ball position is not just about where's the ball relative to my feet, it's about where's it relative to my feet, my body, the angles, my stance width, the club shaft, a lot of different things. Next time you head to the golf course, this information hopefully is going to help you get the ball in the right spot and, more importantly, start hitting good, clean, crisp iron shots.